All right, hello everyone, and welcome to our virtual session today, which is specifically, as you know, for students who are admitted to the College of Arts and Sciences or the Maxwell School and who are undecided. My name is Rachel Skipper. I'm a member of our admissions committee and the recruitment team in the College of Arts and Sciences and Maxwell School. Some of you may have met me before during an info session, for example, when you were considering applying or shortly after having been admitted. And I'm glad that we have some return visitors here to talk specifically about being undecided in arts and sciences in Maxwell. I know that some of you are also first-time joiners to a virtual session with us. So thank you, and I'm glad that this session is useful to you and you feel it'll be worth the time to spend about an hour with us this afternoon and talk about what life looks like when you're undecided and admitted to arts and sciences in Maxwell. So more importantly than me, we have two guest speakers, co-leaders for this presentation, Nate and Miranda. I'll let you both go ahead and introduce yourselves. Nate, you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I hope everyone can hear me. My name is Nate Raybeck, and I'm one of the lead academic advisors in the College of Arts and Sciences in the Maxwell School's Advising and Career Services Office. I work primarily with students who come in and work indicate an interest in the sciences, but I also work extensively with students who have indicated that they're not 100% sure what they want to major in. And I work primarily with first and second year students. And so that is also everything cool about me. The one important thing about me that you should probably know is if you can imagine someone who thinks that they're funny but really isn't, I'm their king. So any kind of spacing we might have, any kind of pause or silence, if we're not asking a lot of questions, I might try to fill that in with a joke, and we're talking like great granddad jokes, people, like I only go to the dentist at 2:30, stuff like that, and it only gets worse from there. So that's a little about me, and then we'll pass everything over to Miranda.
Hi guys, I'm Miranda. I am a current senior at Syracuse. I study international relations, psychology, and citizenship and civic engagement. I also have a minor in poli-sci, which sounds like a lot, but I came into Syracuse completely undecided. Like I had no idea what I wanted to do at all. And I've kind of like made my own path type of program in political psychology, which is now what I'm getting a graduate degree in next year, but it didn't exist at Syracuse. So I've kind of worked on my own with professors and stuff to make that happen here a little bit for myself. That's not something you have to do. There's plenty of majors you can choose from without having to go like and seek someone else who would do your thing, but that's kind of how I've done it here. Yeah.
So now that we've introduced ourselves, I would also like you and the student audience to introduce yourselves using the chat. This is for attendance purposes so that I can know which of you attended tonight, and just so that our co-presenters who haven't seen the roster for tonight know who's here. So in the chat, please share your first and last name and let us know what city and state you're zooming in from. If you'd rather just share this privately with me, that's fine. And we'll use this to make sure that we don't send you annoying emails related to sessions for undecided students if you've already attended one. So this will be for the health of your email inboxes, which I know are overrun with college emails right now. And just let us know where you're zooming from. Just kind of good for our co-presenters to know who we're talking to.
I didn't add that in, but I'm also from Buffalo, New York, which is where I am for the Easter weekend right now. But yeah.
I'm already seeing a lot of New York in the chat, so that's great. So I'd like to kind of start off this presentation while you're filling in the chat with your names and locations with just kind of an overview of how this session will run. If you've been in a lot of college Zooms before, or even a Syracuse Zoom, you're probably bracing yourself for me to put up a boring set of slides that we will drag you through, and we are not going to do that tonight. The point of this session will be to have just a more genuine, relaxed conversation about being undecided at Syracuse, and more importantly, to make sure we answer what specific questions you as a group of students have, so that again, you're making good use of your time with us tonight. So once the chat calms down, we will open the floor for questions from the audience, which Miranda, Nate, and I will work together to answer, really focusing more on Nate and Miranda as they are going to be your peers and leadership on campus. So the first question that I think most students have, which I will just put out there as a starting point, is they wonder what their first steps look like as an undecided student, right? When I come to campus, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I figure that out? So Miranda, if you could maybe lead with your first few steps, what you felt got you on the right track. And then if we could have Nate follow up with what his advice for any student would be, we'll start there. And the student audience, just begin to think of what questions you have, because I will be turning to you for what questions you have moving forward in the session. So Miranda, do you want to tell us kind of how things took off for you?
Yeah, so for me personally, I came in with like a handful of different interests. So I was undecided personally because I had like a bunch of different interests in like a bunch of different areas. So that's kind of why I was having trouble deciding. So for me, I ended up, when the roster came out and you can choose classes in the summer, I just kind of picked like one from a bunch of different areas. So I took like a politics class because I was interested in IR. I took a psychology course. I took a English course, a philosophy course. I think I took a hard science course. It might have been like a physics course or something random like that. But I just kind of took a couple different things from different areas so I could see which ones I was more interested in the college setting. Because I know high school, you take class and you're like, oh, I hated AP Euro in high school, but now I'm an international major with concentration in Europe, the European region. So like it is very different than when you get there. So for me, I started off doing that, and I met with some of my advisors. I had a couple different advisors, but I met with my one advisor through a program I'm part of, and I sat down with her and kind of said, oh, I'm really unclear on about everything I want to do. Here's XYZ of my interests. And she gave me like 3 or 4 professors to reach out to. There, like, I kind of think this is like the intersection of what you're talking about. Like they might have better ideas for you than I do. And I met with a couple of them, one of which is now like my thesis advisor. Like she's helped me with grad school. She writes all my rec letters. I do research for her and everything. She like founded the field of political psychology basically. And that's kind of how I found that area of my interest, by going and meeting with her after I'd taken these courses and seeing these are kind of where my interests are. And an advisor telling me, here's where the intersection is, go see these people. And that's what my process kind of looked like.
Awesome. And we know, from Miranda's story, this is a unique niche thing that our students do. Specifically, arts and sciences and Maxwell students is they have multiple interests. They find weird ways that those interests intersect, and then they tend to just dive deep at those intersections between their interests. That's a trait of undecided students. It's not, I have no idea what I want. It's, I want a lot of different things and I can't pick between them. And you don't necessarily have to. So Nate works with students in this mindset or, of this brand all the time. So Nate, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you advise students in this situation on a more general format?
Sure. But before I even get started, I want to give a message to every last one of you here. And that is this: you're fine. It is completely okay. 90% of the students that I've worked with in the 4 years that I've worked here at Syracuse University have in some way, shape, or form changed their minds about what they thought they may be interested when they first came in and what they ultimately decided to do when they left, if they ever left, right? Some of them stay around. And I have the joy of working with a number of people who are alums from Syracuse. The biggest thing that I can sort of encourage you with is that none of you are undecided or undeclared about the purpose of and importance of your story. You take pictures of the greatest brunch you've ever had, hashtag Instagram fire. But you also speak out when you see social injustice. You're connected to the world in a way that dinosaurs like me could have not even imagined in the middle 90s when I went to school. Yes, I'm dating myself here, and I am old, I know. You're connected. Your voice is important. Your message is important. It becomes less and less about what you study and more about what you do. The only question you ever need to ask in any college meeting or conversation about schools is this: does this institution have the resources to support me in my endeavor? And if I don't know what that endeavor ultimately is, does it have the resources to help me figure that out? Syracuse University has 11, just in the College of Arts and Sciences in Maxwell, 11 advisors, 10 just like me, 10 much more funny than I am, just like me, dedicated to helping you figure out how to tell your story. And your story could be very much like Miranda's, one that you have to create because it doesn't actually exist at the outset. And from day one, May 15th, you're going to get an email from your advisor in the College of Arts and Sciences being like, hi, I'm here to help you. Let's start talking about your areas of interests. Let's start talking about what things you want to explore, what things motivate you, what questions you want to ask, what answers you want to seek. And our job is to help you weave that together here at your first semester at SU into something that not only counts for something you may need for graduate, but helps you begin to tell your story. So I go back to the original thing I said at the beginning. You're fine. How can we help you tell your story? And that's my first meeting with every one of my advisees.
So I kind of like to gauge that feeling in this room for a minute, because I know I get a ton of emails from students who are thinking, I'm undecided. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to proceed with my application. I don't know what to do now that I'm admitted. I don't know how to choose a school because I'm undecided. So I can't compare the political science program at one school to the political science program at another school, for example. So just by a show of hands, could we see who feels a little bit unsettled or confused about how to proceed? Yep, not surprising, a bunch of hands go up. So this is kind of a good way for you in the audience to see kind of exactly what Nate is saying. It's not a big deal. It is fine, right? And that's a really important point. About half of our applicant pool for arts and sciences in Maxwell is undecided. So if anything, you're in the majority of students who are coming in, and students like arts and sciences in Maxwell when they're undecided, because we have so many options. We have 50 undergraduate programs to choose from. I mean, it's nuts, and that can be overwhelming. So I would say one thing that you'll be really relying on, like Nate mentioned, is your academic advisor who actually reaches out to you before you ever set foot on campus to start thinking about what do you really want to take? What do you take in high school that you hated that you never want to take again? Where might your interests lie? And they build a schedule for you. And that way you have a jumping off point to start thinking about these different areas that you might be interested in. So there's no reason to panic. There's no reason to feel uncertain. We are going to talk to you one-on-one about what your interests are going to be, you think, right? You can change your mind, that's fine. We're going to build a schedule for you. You're going to navigate through that schedule. Some things are going to motivate you. Some things are not, and that's okay. We'll kind of zoom in on those things that motivate you. And by the end, you'll end up in a major that kind of aligns with those courses. And what Nate mentioned too, briefly, but I think is also a really good point, if we have parents in the room who are cringing at the thought of paying tuition so that their student can figure it out and take classes that they might or might not like, the good silver lining here is that all the classes that you're taking will ultimately count towards something when you graduate. So you're not just burning through credits for no reason. That's why we have you work with an advisor, right? It would be easy for any student to pick from a list of classes things they might like. The advisor comes in and says, let's think carefully about this and choose things that address what you're interested in, while also will count towards graduation no matter what major you land in. So it's a well-orchestrated team effort, I think, between all of our advisors and the undecided students to make sure that you're making good choices and thinking about, what makes sense to match your interests, but also what keeps you on a structured four-year plan, though you are being creative through the plan and finding what is going to be most interesting to you. So if I could hear in the chat from anyone who has a specific question at this point. I'm full of questions that I can pose hypothetically for the group because I work in admissions and I get these questions all the time. So I'm happy to keep talking about hypothetical questions, but I think it would be most useful for all of you if you get your specific questions answered. And again, you can ask this to the whole group, or you can send me a private message and I will share your question anonymously with Nate and Miranda.
If I could actually pick up on something that Rachel said, one of the most important things here that I think everyone needs to sort of keep in mind is that we don't just build you your first semester schedule and then say, okay, there you go, you're off. We are with you every step of the way, from before you take your first step on campus to when you take your last step off of campus. You will have a dedicated advisor in the College of Arts and Sciences in Maxwell from when you first come to when you leave. We do not at any way, shape, or form expect you to do this alone. And so to all the parents in the room as well, we are here. The members of my team and the members in the advising office down to the last person are dedicated to your success. And that success not only means you flourishing in the major or combination of majors in your dreams, but also to make sure that you're making timely progress through the degree programs that you selected. So you will constantly have support for every turn you want to take. And if a student is ever like, hey, in fact, right before I got in here, I got an email from a student to be like, that said, Nate, I need to rechange my entire plan. I think I found exactly what it is that motivates me. When can we meet? And I'm like, we're going to meet Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock. I'll send you the invite right now. And we do that time and time again, because that's what motivates us in the advising and career services office to sort of work with you all from the outset. I hope that that's somewhat helpful.
Yes, and I think that addresses the question that the first question that came in the chat, are you assigned an advisor? Yes, you're assigned an undecided advisor. And then when you decide what you want to do, you'll move from an undecided advisor to a new advisor who specializes in the area that you want. So for example, let's say that you pick up biology. You know, after working with your undecided, you figured it out, it's biology, you switch over to a STEM advisor who works with biology and other STEM students. So like Nate said, you're never floating, you're never on your own, you always have an advisor, but the advisor will change hands when you are no longer undecided. And you will at some point no longer be undecided, rest assured, thanks to the hard work of our undecided advisors. Miranda, did you want to chime in on this?
Yeah, I was gonna say two things. So one, to pick up on something Rachel said, mentioned briefly, and I think it's also a question in the chat as well. In terms of like not only figuring out your major, like you can switch it when you want to. So you're not like set into a major just because you decide your first semester you might want to do that. You don't even have to decide your first semester. I didn't have anything declared until I think second semester sophomore years when I started declaring something, and I was still taking classes within the major that I knew I wanted to go into at that, because I kind of knew by the end of freshman year what I wanted. I just procrastinated and put things off and didn't declare it for a while, but I was still taking classes that I needed to take because I had advisors that were telling me what to do anyway. But once you do declare a major, and I also changed by like 4 different times, like I added and dropped CC different times. I didn't add psychology till junior year. Like I switched my stuff around so much because I am a very indecisive person. But beyond the advisor you get through arts and sciences, you also get an advisor for any major you choose. And if it's multiple majors, you get multiple advisors for each of those. You'll get one for your minor if you need one. I had an advisor just for honors and honors courses to take. So it's not only like you have the general one you need, you also have one for each of your specific interests. And it's not like overwhelming, like, oh, I have to see all of them all the time. You can pick and choose who you need to see when. And it's just like whatever you need help with, there's going to be someone specific there to help you with. And you get peer advisors too. Like you'll get a senior or a junior who's going to help you with different things as well through different aspects. So you're really, really all set on what you need in terms of advising, if that partially answers the question somewhere.
Yeah, Syracuse does a really great job of advising students, and sometimes I feel like I make students' heads spin during my other info sessions when I describe what our advising model looks like, which is kind of a different advisor for different things. You will talk to Nate about things that are very different than you will go to with your psychology major advisor. And that will be different from what you chat with your study abroad advisor about. And then once you're closer to graduation, you'll have career advising meetings, and those will be completely different from anything else you've had. So you'll have a network of support with different people to go to for different questions. And the team of advisors that any given student have is different based on that student's major, their interests, their needs, their professional development goals, their extracurricular activities. So that's a really great thing. You have a whole host of people around you at all times who you can bounce ideas off and ask questions from. Nate, I got kind of a question that made me laugh because I think it's one that you'll like. How many times you permitted to change your major during a semester? So is there a limit on the number of times I can change my mind? This is a true undecided student here.
Well, this is a fantastic question for me. I had in the span of 1 month, I had a student change his major 4 times. Because this week it was political science, then the next week it was going to be philosophy, then the next week it was going to be political philosophy because he didn't know that we had that as a particular major. And then I think the student finally ended up landing in biology. It's a very simple process. Now, what I would say about that is the first question that's going to come out of your advisor's mouth is going to be something like this: why? What are you ultimately interested in? And have you thought about doing a minor with that, or just simply taking a class? Because one of the things that we frequently see is we see people that come in, they're like, oh, well, I want to do this. That means I have to have this major. And I cannot tell you how wrong of an idea that absolutely is. Just because you want to do X doesn't mean you have to major in Y. The formula has changed so much that it's now really about the kind of skills that you build, much more so than the major or majors that you arrive on. And so one of the things we do in our advising model is to really dig down to get at the heart of what it is you're really after. And what sets Syracuse University apart from other universities is the relational aspect that advisors and advisees cultivate over these meetings, over the fact that I'm going to talk to you starting in May. We're going to plan your courses. I'm going to get to know you. I'm going to get to know your interests. I'm going to get to know when I see a new course come across from a department that looks like a really good fit for you, to send that out, to give you that kind of personalized individual advice. And that's why we have 23 different members in our office who are all student facing, who work with students to help give them that kind of relationship. So there isn't really a limit, and it's literally going to be as many times as you want to fill out the form. But there are bigger questions that gets wrapped up in. If you're not 100% sure what you want to do, that's okay. Let's take a class for that. And by the way, that class would be needed to satisfy this requirement. So we will work with you on whatever you sort of want to build. And we are more than happy to do that. And that includes if you're thinking about, let's say that you come here and you indicated an interest in economics, but you start hearing about Whitman, or you start looking at Whitman, and you're like, I wonder if I could transfer to the Whitman School of Management. That is a fantastic conversation to have with your advisor, because yes, that process is absolutely possible, but it is and can be a difficult process if you try to go it alone. But you will never be, I don't want to say you'll never be alone because that sounds kind of creepy in that sort of way. That's not what I mean. What I mean is you're never without guidance. You're never without somebody. In fact, I put on a presentation like this just for students who are interested in going to Whitman. And we'll go through step by step. Here are the kinds of things you do. Here is the timeline that you're looking at. We'll review certain submissions for their essay questions, and I'll ask the audience, hey, is that a good response to this? How would we make this better? We will proofread your responses for these kind of things. All in the name of helping to make you the best you can be. And I tried to figure if I could get 3 U's in there, and I did, so I was successful. That's sort of what we do. So literally the sky is somewhat the limit, but one of the things that all of you need to be prepared to answer is the question why. The biggest difference between high school and college is not really the level of difficulty in the work. It's really the fact that you are going to be in charge. Your advisor will not sit here and tell you, here's exactly what you need to do. Your advisor will ask you, where is it you want to go? What is it you want to do? Are you interested in that? Because if you tell me right now, you put your hands up and you're like, Nate, I want you to kill math. I want you to make it dead. I never want to see it again. I have magical powers. I can do that. But should I? Is it really what you're after? Those are the kind of conversations that you have with your advisor. And I think I got a couple of the other questions that were in the chat as well. Rachel, did I pick up on a few of those?
You did. And one thing you touched on, but I think some of the students in the audience would like for you to zoom in on, is the transfer IUT process. So students, IUT is inter-university transfer, and it means a student who's not transferring out of Syracuse University, they're transferring within the university to a different school. So I got a question about the Falk College, which is the College for Human Dynamics at Syracuse. I got a question about Whitman, which is the business school at Syracuse. So quite a few private messages about this. Students are wondering, what if it's not arts and sciences in Maxwell? And I come in and now I see far in the distance the Whitman school, and that seems really interesting. And the answer, students, is that you do have to apply to switch schools. You don't just get to bounce around within Syracuse University willy-nilly. They do want you to apply. It's not another Common App. It is not going to take over your life in the way that college admissions has right now. It's, Nate just kind of briefly mentioned maybe essay questions, heavily depends on your GPA. So if you're thinking that you may want to switch, I will be candid with you and tell you, focus on your grades when you come in, because your freshman grades need to be strong if you want to switch, especially to a more competitive school like the Newhouse School. But Nate just kind of alluded to the support that arts and sciences advisors give to students, even if they're saying goodbye, right? Even if they want to go somewhere else at Syracuse. So Nate, can you just touch a little bit more on like the general process for what happens if a student comes to arts and sciences in Maxwell and decides that another school or college at Syracuse is actually a better fit?
Sure, I'm more than happy to do that. In fact, I'm happy to do an example, an actual example. So since we've talked about Whitman a couple times, let me walk you through the Whitman thing specifically. So because I have 2 students right now who are going through that process, and we identified that early May. The student said, I'm thinking about economics, but I'm really interested in going to the Whitman School. And I said, great, we've got a couple things we need to work on. Let's start with some of the basic course requirements that Whitman is going to have. And that is, Whitman actually has 3. The first one would be any course in calculus or AP credit in calculus. Now, I've had students who come in and are like, I'm really interested in business, but I don't want anything to do with calculus. And I was like, okay. One of the other things, you pick 2 of these 3 courses. So calculus is one of them. The other course is a course in statistics. And they're like, well, I don't really want to do the statistics either. And then usually that conversation turns about, well, what is it that you're really interested in doing in business? Because I've just highlighted 2 of the major factors in Whitman's own curriculum, and you don't seem to be a fan of those. And then we have a discussion. The third class is Economics 101. And so what typically we would do is I would say, listen, I want you to take the math placement exam and we'll see where you land. If you already have AP credit for calc or AP credit for stats, great. I'm going to put you in Economics 101. We're going to make sure that class is there and we can test it out. But that's just the curricular aspect. So within your first 2 semesters at Syracuse, you need to have 2 of those 3 classes done. before you begin the process of doing the application to transfer to Whitman. So we start with the curricular stuff. Then we get into some of the nitty-gritty details. Whitman asks you two very, very pronounced questions. The first one is, what is it that you've done while you've been at SU that demonstrates your leadership? So the first part of the conversation I'm going to have with the student is I'm going to be like, look, what does your resume look like? They're like, oh, well, I've got all this stuff from high school. I'm like, great. Put it on a shelf because that doesn't count anymore. We need to get you involved in SU. So what are the clubs that you're interested in? What are the organizations that you're interested in? Here are the resources to look that up. Let's figure that out because they're going to want to get you involved. And the second thing is the second question that Whitman asked, because Whitman asked this: why is it you want to come to Whitman? And what are your ultimate career goals or aspirations, and how will Whitman help you do that? And so we start that conversation. Why is it that you want to go to Whitman to study accounting? And we'll have that conversation and we'll begin to tease that out. We'll then think, okay, these programs would be great supplements to that. This would be a good thing for you to be involved in as well. And we'll begin to build that. And we begin to build that early because Whitman only gives you one shot. End of freshman year is the last thing for you to be able, if you want to go to be a Whitman major. However, Whitman has a minor program that only requires you to have 4 remaining semesters left. So what we could do is start talking about the minor. So one of my students who was real gung-ho on Whitman from the beginning, but said, yeah, math and stats, I'm not interested in that. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be like Mark Cuban without the math. And I said, wonderful. We're going to start working on getting you involved in clubs and organizations. And we're going to look at the Whitman minor in entrepreneurship specifically. And we're going to start building those blocks. And I haven't even talked about the GPA because their GPA is a range. Normally it's anywhere between a 3.5 to a 3.6. I've seen people get in with a 3.3. I've seen people get denied who had a 3.8 because they didn't have the resume. They did, their literal essay would say something like, I just want to work in business. Okay, but that doesn't tell me why. It doesn't tell me why. And so we'll explore those kind of issues. Same thing with Newhouse. Newhouse is straight GPA calculation. Newhouse is going to line up the GPAs after your first year at SU, and they're going to say, what are the top 30 GPAs? And that's where they're going to draw their line. And if that's a 3.8, it's a 3.8. I've seen it as high as a 3.9. I've seen it as low as a 3.6. So Rachel's point at the beginning, maximizing your performance in your classes early on is the best way to go. Falk is kind of like the Wild West. It depends on the program that you want to go to. In certain programs, I've sent students to talk to Falk, and all of a sudden they come back to me and they're like, well, I'm a Falk student now. It's immediate. I've seen people that whenever they're like, well, it's a year-long process. It really varies. So the specification there goes. But the biggest piece of advice I can give you is if these are things you want to explore or areas you might want to look into, begin that conversation with someone early. There is never such a thing as planning too early for what it is you think you might want to do. 1, you can always change your mind. And 2, early planning means flexibility. The more flexible we can be, the more options we'll have at our disposal. Does that address the question? All? Is that where? Okay.
Yeah, I think that eases some concerns too. I totally get students feeling afraid to take a next step because you feel like you'll be pigeonholed into a decision that you made when you were undecided. So how could it be a good decision? It's a good decision to be undecided. If you don't know what you're going to do in college, being arts and sciences or Maxwell at Syracuse is a really good idea because you have so much flexibility, so many options. And like Nate said, a lot of support for even if you find that arts and sciences and Maxwell wasn't the right choice, a lot of support for navigating your way out of that and into another school at Syracuse. So very common, not something to worry about. There's a lot of plans in place, which I think you appreciate after Nate's example, that will help you. I have another question, and like our last topic, a few different private messages about the first semester schedule. So, you know, some are how many credits, some are, do I get to take classes in a major that I think I might want? Am I putting myself behind schedule? And I think we've kind of answered a few of those in the other conversations we've been having. But if we could, I'd like Miranda to kind of reflect on her first semester, the classes she took, what was useful, what was not, and again, just how that set her up as a jumping off point. And then of course, Nate, if you have advice to follow up, general advice for what classes we choose for first semester undecided students and why, that would be useful.
Yeah, so I can definitely talk about my first semester schedule. I will in advance apologize for my coughing. I had bronchitis last week, so as I talk more, I'm going to start coughing in between my words more. So apologies in advance for that. But in regards to my first semester, and also touching on a point Nate made a while ago about figuring out like why you want to do something. I know that seems like to me that seems like a really scary concept, and honestly, as I'm applying for jobs, still seems like a really scary concept. But it doesn't have to be a huge philosophical answer. So it could just be like, I'm good at math. I like math. I'm going to major in math. Like I have a friend who's majoring in math and minoring in music performance, and he's only done internships in the political field. Like he worked on a campaign as a campaign manager. He interned for the Senate. Like you don't have to have this big philosophical reason for I want to do this because I want to do X, Y, Z down the road. I know it now. It could just be like, I hate this. I don't want to do it. I love this. I'm great at this. This is my skill set. This is what I want to do. I'm going to find a job that fits that later on. So in that vein, what I did freshman year, my first semester, I took U.S. fiction, which is an English course from like 1940 to 2015, like World War II, post-World War II literature. I took an honors intro seminar. Every freshman takes an intro seminar, either an arts and sciences CAS course, or if you're in honors, there'll be an H&R seminar, which is just a 1-credit introduction to university, meet some new people, meet some random professors from different disciplines, that kind of thing. I took social and political philosophy. I took international relations, the intro to international relations. I took Spanish 202, which is like the 4th level Spanish class you can take. And that ended up being 15 credits my first semester, which is what they recommend you to take first semester. Later on, like my sophomore, junior year, I did take a lot more credits. I took between 19 and 21 credits just because I take a lot of random courses that I don't need for anything, just because I like to take random stuff. You don't need to do that ever. There's never a need to take more than 15 credits to graduate unless you do have like 3 majors like I do. But first semester, I'm blanking on the question now. What did that process look like? So over the summer, they send you, or at least when I was a freshman, they sent me a list of basically a bunch of different courses split into different groupings and categories, kind of like social sciences, hard sciences, like political science courses, English types courses. And they kind of encourage you to pick ones from different fields. So you're not just taking like all political courses or all like natural science courses, especially if you don't know what you want to do. So I basically went through and just kind of picked one from each category. Spanish just happened because you need a foreign language requirement, and you take a placement exam for that. And I placed into Spanish 4, which is actually as high as you need to go to get the language requirement, I believe still is the case. And also for IR, you need a language requirement, and that knocked out 4 classes for me in one class, just because you can place into it higher if you've already taken like language courses. Social and political philosophy was great because I had no idea what that was. I just knew a professor that taught it because I had met him when I came and like did a tour of Syracuse at one point, and I just knew I wanted to take that kind of course because I had sat in on it and loved it. I had no idea what that meant. I could still probably not define it for you, but it is honestly to this day one of my favorite courses I've ever taken. It was just a random thing I put on my schedule, so I said, hey, that looks interesting, and now it's kind of shaped my entire like way. Because I do political psychology, but that's actually like that's very similar to philosophy. Psychology and philosophy has a little bit of overlap in like what they teach. So that was that. I took intro to IR because I was interested in IR. That kind of helped me figure out that that's actually is the field I want to go into. I'm not really sure if I'm answering the question at this point because I tend to ramble. Is that kind of where you're going with it, Rachel?
Yeah, I think it's just good for students like you have been providing to hear genuine examples of like how this works, what it looks like from a student who did, you know, find a lot of success after being undecided. So absolutely, I think anytime we can share specific examples of life at Syracuse, that's the hardest thing to find when you're considering colleges and kind of the point of the session. So absolutely. And then Nate, do you have any kind of general framework that you keep in mind when you're thinking about creating schedules for these undecided students? And maybe with an emphasis on exploration, because I do have a couple questions about, again, it feels like students who are afraid of the pigeonhole, you know, once I choose something or once I decide on this, am I stuck only doing those classes? And the answer is no, but I think you could expand on it.
Sure, we absolutely can. So basically the formula that we're going to use for a student who comes in and says, I know exactly what I want to major in and it's this. And the student that comes in and says, I have all these interests, I have no idea what I might want to major in, is exactly the same. We focus on what we call our core requirements. Because what I want you to imagine is I want you to imagine 3 different buckets. The first bucket is that major bucket, where the majors, the minors, all that sort of stuff, that lives here. The bucket, the furthest bucket, the third bucket, let's say, is electives. Those are things that you purely want to take just because you want to take them. In the center of that is what we call the core requirements. These are courses spread across the humanities, the social sciences, the natural sciences, and math. There's a caveat because Syracuse in the College of Arts and Sciences, the Maxwell School, lets you pick between whether you do language or a math. You aren't required to do both, depending on what major you select. So if you select economics, you're going to go a math route due to the major. If you select IR is a great example, you're going in a language route because it's part of the major. You can still do both, and I still have students that do both. And what we're going to focus on is really what are the areas within each of those areas: the humanities, the social sciences, the natural sciences, that you feel most comfortable starting an exploration in. And that's where we're going to gravitate toward. And so we're going to move in those directions. And if you aren't sure what actually is a humanities, we'll have a discussion. We actually have a whole document that breaks it down about here are some of the major things you'll deal with in the humanities. Here are some examples from each different discipline that you would encounter. If this sounds really cool to you, then you might want to explore classes like this. And we'll piece that together. Typically, what we like to start to do is if you don't have AP or transfer credit for like our introductory composition course, which we call Writing 105, we typically start you in the Writing 105 class. If you have those kind of credits, great, we'll move on. If not, we usually start everybody there for that first semester. And the rest of it is just sort of put together, mindful of those core requirements and how we can use those requirements to help you explore areas of interest. You say philosophy sounds interesting to you? Great. Let's put you in a philosophy class to see if that's actually major material. Political science sounds interesting? Great. Let's put you in a political science class. Counts as a social science? Great introduction to that field as a possible major. Philosophy covers your humanities. Not really sure about science or math or anything like that, but know that you're really interested in astronomy? Wonderful. We'll put you in an astronomy class and it will count for that central bucket. So what we do with all incoming students, whether they're undeclared or not, is start with the core and start to work our way out from there into areas. So the question of am I behind if I don't come in with a declared major in mind? Absolutely not. You are in fact in exactly the same kind of position as the same person who comes in declared in terms of attacking those core requirements. Does that help?
I believe so. Yeah, I think it's, you know, like Nate said, just a process of exploring while also trying to stay on a plan. It's the delicate balance. I think that's Nate's job, is that delicate balance, you know, so yes, I think that was helpful. Nate, Miranda, are there questions that jump out to you in the chat that we haven't answered yet? I'm just looking through. I know we still have some. but any that you would like to make sure that you get to answer.
I gotta go up a little bit still. I know I said a little bit about the AP question. Just to like reiterate that SU truly, I applied to quite a few schools and I looked at how the APs transferred. I applied to 11 schools just for the record, and I looked at how APs transfer for all of them because I was just curious. And SU by far for me had the easiest process because I just showed up and I had my official AP scores sent over to university like you'll have to do anyway, and they're automatically counted for you. Like you don't have to do anything with that. It's not like you have to go and say, can I count these? Can I not count these? There's a like chart for it and it shows you exactly what they count for, and that's just automatically done for you. The only thing is like if you want to move them around. So like if one AP could count for multiple things and you want to like choose which one it'll count for you so you can take a specific class to count for the other thing, you can move them around a bit. But other than that, like SU counts quite a few APs and AP scores for very relevant courses. I had all of my liberal arts requirements except for one knocked out by my APs before coming to SU, and I came in with 30 credits, which is a full year's worth of like credits at that point. So it is like a super easy process, especially compared to other schools I looked into.
And I can actually, that's absolutely fantastic. I can actually pick up the back end on that, on exactly what we do. We would accept 30 AP credits. And I know a number of you are going to come in with a number just like Miranda, that high. What we would do with that is in that first, remember how I said you're going to get that first email around May 15th from your advisor? The first line in that email is going to be, do you have AP credit? Question mark. If so, you write back to us and we begin the process of extracting that from College Board, which will leave feelings about College Board alone for the moment. And we'll have all that built out for you. In fact, one of the first meetings you'll have with an advisor will be, how do we maximize the AP credits that you have? Because a number of you are going to have more than 30. You're going to have more than what we're going to be able to take. And so what we take and what we take for what will be a conversation you'll have with your advisor to help put together that best package. So like Miranda, we could get those requirements taken care of using your AP scores in a method that fits best into what you're thinking about or what interests you might have or what you absolutely like. Listen, I did all this math stuff via AP and I want to be done with it. We can absolutely work with you on that level. Syracuse has we have a whole chart that says everything that we will take and what it will take as. And then your advisor will send you that stuff as well. And we'll basically walk through how we utilize those sort of things. But absolutely, we take an exorbitant amount, in fact, more than I have seen other schools take in terms of AP credit sort of stuff, as well as CLEP credit, as well as transfer. If any of you are in a dual credit program, meaning you did something in high school that was through like a community college that was at your high school, we will absolutely take credit for that. English, I know, is frequently done that way. We'll walk you through the process of what we need because we actually need a college transcript rather than your high school transcript. But all that conversation is what we start with you at the very beginning so that we can move into discussions about what your interests are, where your passions lie, and we can begin all of that stuff. But we will be here, and I'm more than happy. I think, Rachel, is my email available to the people in the?
It will be in a second.
Okay, so if you guys have any questions like on that side of the equation, you just want to shoot me an email, just shoot me an email. I'm more than happy to get back to you and sort of help you through that process. Or if you have big questions, or if we can somehow find time on my calendar and you want to do a one-on-one with an advisor while you're through this process, I'm more than happy to volunteer my time to do that. I'm actually off today. See, that's how excited I am here to talk to you all. I came in on my day off to spend it with these wonderful people and all of you because we're just passionate about your success. And that's why we're here. I hope that helps.
Absolutely. Now everyone's going to want Nate to be their advisor. So we'll see how successful some of you are. Miranda, go ahead.
Just to jump, I know you asked about questions in the chat. Jump up. I feel like a few are getting lost in the top. So just to address those very, very quickly. I think they might have come in and out of like other answers that have been given, but just to like make sure they're directly answered. How hard is it to get into classes you want to take? Not hard at all. Obviously, that's different if you want to take like a 10-person super niche course on like aqueducts of like, there are going to be some really small classes that you won't be able to take right when you want to take it. But if you want to take a class, you'll take it before you graduate. It'll be open by the time you graduate at least one semester. And any class above like 20, 30, I've personally never had any issue getting into. Just register, like make sure you check when your registration time comes and do it when that time comes. But it's a really good system for that. I've never met anyone who's had like a true issue with that. And if it's something you need to graduate, you'll definitely get it. And then how easy is the transferring process we talked about. Once you declare a major, can you still take classes outside of that major? Yes, I've taken classes in so many different schools and majors and random different things just because I'm interested. I took something on like disability rights within comic books, which has nothing to do with, I don't even know, I've never read a comic book in my life. And I just took it to see like what it was about. And there was no problem. Professors don't question it. There's truly nothing you have especially to do with that. When do you have to declare a major by? I don't think there's an actual hard deadline for it. Obviously, if you're a senior, you haven't declared anything, you're going to get questions from your advisors at that point. But I think usually by the end of sophomore year is like the soft deadline for when you should have one done, which is a lot of time to do it. But you can change it still before then. Like a lot of times you'll have taken classes, like if you get to junior year, your first semester junior year, and you're like, I hate this major, I want to change it. You've probably taken courses that are going to go into the one you want to change it to if you know you want to change it. So there's a good chance it'll still work, not always, but like chance is there. Sorry, I'm just like rapid firing through these. Someone can cut me off if you want.
No, I was about to do the same thing, and I had actually jotted them down. I was going to do the same thing. I actually jotted these down so I could do exactly what you're doing. So keep up the good work.
Okay, I can go through like 2 or 3 more, and then I'll take a breath. But
well, I do want to interject here that you actually are required to declare a major once you've earned 60 credits. So if you come in with 30 AP credits, and we follow the 15, typically after that first year, once you get to where you get to junior status, you have, and there's a hold that actually goes on your account that will prevent you from registering until you have, you've declared a major.
They are recording this, and it seems awesome. So,
oh, well, thank you.
Someone might not be muted who wants to be muted, but we'll take the compliment either way.
I apologize for getting misinformation then. That might have changed. I had like 75 credits or something before I declare anything, and no one ever questioned it for me. So that may be something that either I just got missed in the process, but I apologize for that. But yeah, I think one of the other ones are internships and research opportunities. Like, yes, businesses come to campus. I get an email like once a month about different companies and everything that are coming from all over the place. And it's not pigeonholed. So like I get emails about Whitman businesses that are coming, and I've never taken a Whitman class in my life at Syracuse, nor would I probably ever take one, but I still see that they're coming. Like I might have an interest in a company that's in Whitman that has a role that I would be interested in, which is nice. There's a bunch of research and internships in the Syracuse community. So personally, I interned at Center for Community Alternatives my sophomore year while I was taking classes, which is just a criminal justice, reincarceration justice firm there. I've also done a lot of like volunteer work. So I teach which like kind of counts, like I put them in professional experience, even though it's volunteer. So I teach at a refugee center. I teach English classes to adults, English as second language classes, and now I teach the kids classes as well. I've done tutoring and mentoring programs at the Boys and Girls Club there. There's a million and one things in the community that you can do in different fields. And research is a bunch on campus. Honestly, arts and sciences, Maxwell research opportunities are such an untapped area of Syracuse. So like where science labs can sometimes be competitive to get into, no one really ever knows that there's like social sciences stuff going on. So if you're interested in that field, like I am in a research lab right now so I study political psychology and I study terrorism and homegrown violent extremism. And I found a lab in Maxwell that does research on black spots, which are areas of the world that fall outside of effective government control. And so I do quantitative analysis on that very random niche project that no one even knows exists outside of like our research group. Like I tell people about it and like, oh, I never even knew you could do that here. There's a ton of research opportunities that you would never even think of existing. I didn't know what a black spot was until I started doing it, and you can find those. I think I'm very much rapid firing right now. I don't know if someone else wants to jump in on it.
No, this is great. I think we kind of are at the point where we have to just make sure we fire off responses to the questions that we were missing. I think you covered them. We do have a lot of opportunities for research and internships at Syracuse. It doesn't matter that you were undecided. A question that I get related to this is, if I'm a biology major, can I only do biology research, or do I have to do biology research? And I think Miranda's question answered that very well. Professors don't care. They want people to help in their labs. They want to teach students, and they don't care what your major is on paper. Why? It'll probably change. Students do this all the time. It really doesn't make sense to sort students into groups based on major very often. So as long as you have the skills that they're looking for as someone who would be competent in their research group, right? For an English and textual studies professor who wants to work with a student and they're on a writing project and the student's a biology student, as long as the biology student has demonstrated writing skills, and the professor might ask them, demonstrate your writing skills, and they can do that, then they can work with that professor. If a biology lab wants to do a research project and they want to bring in a psychology student to work on that research project, it's a matter of demonstrating that they have the background knowledge in that area to contribute, which if it's something you're interested in, you might already have, or maybe you need to take a class and brush up on that. So internships work the same way. No one cares what your major is. They care what your skills are and how informed you are within the context of that position, whether it's internship or research. So being undecided really doesn't play a role, and your major doesn't play that much of a role in the research and internship opportunities you have on campus.
Also, just a side note on that, not needing the major, I did a research, I stayed over the summer, the past 2 summers, because I worked in the community, but also was doing research on campus. And one of those research opportunities was with a professor in the environmental sciences department, and he looked at NASA and NASA's policy and climate change via satellite research, which I didn't even know that was a thing. I know nothing about environmental science. I know nothing about NASA. I know nothing about space. I still know very little about it, but someone introduced me to him, and I knew he needed an assistant for the summer. And he explained his project to me. I was like, oh, actually, that seems like this psychology trajectory would fit really well into what you're trying to explain. Like, this psych principle seems like that's a big factor. I mean, he's like, I've never heard of that psychology thing. Can you tell me more about it? And I told him more about it, and I got hired to do it, having no idea what I had to do a bunch of background research before I went in about what he was trying to talk about. But just the fact that I was doing something in a different field that he had no experience in, because professors don't have experiences in every field. You just don't, no matter what your field is. It was actually more helpful that I wasn't in his field of study, because it gave him information that he didn't really have before that. So you don't need to have any major to do anything, is my point in that.
Yeah, absolutely. The same goes for like student clubs and organizations, different campus resources, any groups that you might want to join on campus, advice that you might want to get from a professor. You know, I think most of our professors would be absolutely thrilled if a student showed up in their office who isn't part of that major and is just interested, right? That's what college is about, and especially at a liberal arts school. So that's something that we hope you'll do as well. So we're reaching the end of the session. I just want to give everyone the heads up that I had some students who would have liked to participate in this session with Miranda tonight, but who were not able to make it. And they gave me their email addresses so that you could reach out to them with questions. So Miranda is a great example of a Syracuse student, but it's a diverse community. Students have all different interests. Students have all different stories. Miranda is not the only example of how to be undecided at Syracuse. And these students are great because they have majors or landed in majors from all the different areas within arts and sciences in Maxwell, from the humanities to STEM to the social sciences. So if there are students that you see in the chat now who you think would be interesting to talk to, or you'd like their opinion, or if you want to email all of them, go for it. They've volunteered their contact information to me to share with you so that, again, you have the support that you need at this point. So Nate, do you have any closing comments you'd like to share with the students before we log off?
You all are great. I'm going to reiterate the same thing I said at the beginning. You're 100% fine. The level of questions that you all have asked in this session has been astounding. It's amazing. You're clearly vested. You're clearly interested. That's what this is all about. This exploration process is all about you figuring out who you want to become, where you want to go. And trust me, the most interesting people I know still don't have answers to those questions. You're not behind at any level. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. And if you're asking the right questions and if you're reflecting upon what you really value, you are going to be a success. And we are here to help you in every step of the way. And I would leave it at that.
I don't think I can beat that. Miranda, any closing comments that you'd like to share with the students audience before we close out?
Yes, just so quickly, because I see, did we answer the study abroad question in the chat? Because if not, I can do it.
No, just chime in on that really quickly.
Okay. The 3-second version of this, because it actually does relate to Undecided a lot. I think I could not even tell you how many study abroad programs are at SU, because you can do our programs or you can do partner programs, or you can petition to do. My friend did one at Oxford, which isn't anywhere on any SU website at all. He just petitioned to do it. You can apply for them freshman, sophomore year. There are some programs that won't take you unless you're a junior, but there are some that will take you earlier. So it just depends kind of which one you want to do. And you can just meet with the study abroad advisors, and they'll run through that whole process. They'll tell you what you can do and when, based on your interest and when you want to do it. So you do it like that. And honestly, like, that's a really good way if you are still undecided. Like, I knew I was IR in psychology by the time I studied abroad. I studied abroad in Denmark. But it wasn't until I went to Denmark and took some courses there that I knew exactly why I was studying the things I was studying, like what I wanted to do within that field and the specific interest that I had, and like what my thesis and my research was going to be. So that is also a good way if you are undecided to pick somewhere that has some things you're interested in, or like even a country you're interested in. And if you do it early on, you might have an answer by the end of it. So that's kind of that whole process of it. Just meet with the advisor and they'll give you all the information you need to know about where, when, how, why. So
yeah, just to reiterate the point, you'll have tons of advice, different people to answer different questions, a study abroad advisor if you choose to study abroad, along with a whole list of other advisors. So that support will be there for you. I did paste the link to the study abroad website into the chat if anyone wants to just click over there and scroll through some of the options that our students have. It's incredible. Syracuse is a fantastic school for study abroad. So we do hope that all of our students take advantage of that. Undecided, again, plays no role in that decision. So again, thank you for coming tonight. I hope that you learned a lot. I learned some things, and I think Miranda did, so that was cool. We appreciated meeting with you. We hope that you'll reach out to us if you have questions. You have all of our information. You have mine from previous emails, Nate's, Miranda's in the chat, and also some other potential Syracuse students to touch base with. So we hope that you understand that we are here to support you, that we will continue to do that throughout the summer and into your first days at Syracuse. And then you'll have peers like Miranda, advisors like Nate, who will take it from there outside of admissions. So again, thank you for coming today. And I look forward to speaking with all of you in the future. Happy deciding.